And we're live. Welcome everyone to Don't Be Coy. I'm your host, Unkle Lew, and today I have the honor, the pleasure, and the utmost appreciation to have with me today the Michael J. Cleveland. Michael, thank you for being on the show, sir. How are you doing this evening or afternoon?
Hey, all the way from the Midwest. I am doing pretty good, enjoying this snowy weather in Chicago.
I appreciate the energy, man. I really appreciate the energy. If you would be so kind to give yourself like a little introduction so that the people at home can know who you are and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, sure. Well, hey, everyone. My name is Michael J. I like to go by Michael J because there are so many Michaels in the world. I need to be a little bit different. It's the start of, that brand, that legacy. So I am born and raised in Natchez, Mississippi, the oldest settlement along the Mississippi River. I'm a graduate of Natchez High School, Unkle College, Morehouse School of Medicine's Master in Public Health program. I have lived, the South, the Pacific Northwest. Now I'm in the Midwest. My areas of expertise of joy are public health, healthcare operations, strategy, their true operational piece. One thing I do like to do to blow off steam or enjoy life is play tennis, watch anime, and video games. And I am one of those introverted extroverts that knows how to have a good time, but knows when to relax. I like that homebody piece as well.
One thing that you brought up real quick there is that you're a graduate of two HBCUs, Unkle College and Morehouse. I'm curious about what made you decide to go to two HBCUs.
It was a lot of influence, I think, from my high school guidance counselors, because they made sure that you saw the PWIs, you saw the HBCUs, you were knowledgeable about it, and you made rational decisions. They didn't it wasn't a bias. Even though majority of them were HBCU graduates, there was no bias. They said, we're going to show you the entire world. And actually, I had no intentions of going to Unkle first. I was going to University of Louisiana in Monroe. I was gung-ho, I was ready, but then that scholarship package came and I said they lost their mind because I'm worth way more than just waving out of state. And I did a tour of Unkle College. I mean, literally when I stepped off the bus, I knew this was the place to be. I wanted to be a doctor, and Unkle was producing over 30% of the doctors in Mississippi, so it's a place to go. And they offered a full ride. So I said, well, why not? And the lessons learned and the passions developed from Unkle led me to Morehouse School of Medicine. And it just extended even further there, growing the network, being involved in public health, the different hospital systems, CDC work, a little academic teaching. And I think it felt like home and allowed me to grow professionally in the right method.
Yeah, no, I feel that. So, I mean, one thing that I feel like is really interesting is you're an articulate individual when it comes to sharing your experiences and the diversity of it. And I think that to a lot of people, that's really impressive, which is true. You know what I'm saying? You've done a lot of great things, and it's you've leveraged a lot of different key relationships and networks that you've built along the time. And what's really interesting to me is to some people, that would make you a member of the talented 10th, right? You've been an SGA president at Unkle. You were a Jackson Hart Study Scholar, which is, a really kind of, for lack of a better term, it's a prestigious role. You know what I'm saying? The opportunity to do research at the undergraduate level and understanding building those presentation skills and traveling to all these different things that exposes you to a lot of different resources and opportunities that a lot of people just aren't aware of. You know what I mean? So it's is your HBCU experience the HBCU experience that literally anybody can get from walking on the campus, or is it like, what was it specifically about you, or what did you do that led you to have those experiences? You know what I mean?
I can say that this type of experience is open to anyone that, pursues this route, not just HBCUs, but then PWIs as well. But I think the fact of it at a HBCU, if a teacher or a mentor or someone on staff, they see potential there and they see, there's someone that has a mission in mind. The fact that they will pour into you, make you aware of these opportunities, make sure, I remember when I was going for Jackson Heart Study, I was, finding out like, hey, how would the interview be? What interview prep can I do? Who can interview me before the interview? They helped us open up those type of opportunities to say like, okay, we know you're this boy from, this small country town, but coming to Unkle Lew, I had never flown that many places. My idea of a vacation and going out of town was a church convention. So I was like a wide idea when it came there. But they provided these opportunities that allowed me to go forward. And the thing about it is I was hungry for it. I was hustling. I was like, oh, my family has sacrificed for me to be here. I'm not going to let them down. I'm still going to have a good time. I still had a good time, but I'm hungry for it. If there was an opportunity out there for it, I'm going to go get it. They will say, well, Michael, somebody else can get that. I say, well, somebody else don't want it. I want it.
Yeah.
If I can handle doing 3, 4, 5 things at the same time, balancing out the organizational structures or, making sure my schedule is aligned, lack of sleep, for a little while, I would sacrifice that now for myself in the end. I started working in like 2012 at a flower shop scrubbing buckets. And from then I knew I got to hustle. I said, no, I can't scrub no buckets the rest of my life. So that helped spur that, hungriness that led to Unkle Lew. So when if it was an opportunity, I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to go for it. And that's something that every individual can do. They have to be open to constructive criticism. They have to be open to failure, because everything won't be good. I remember one time I was in a lab. I was doing research. The biology professor came up to me and she said, you need to slow down or you're going to fail my class. You're doing too much. I appreciated that. I was like, okay, for a couple of weeks, let me back up, slow down on some things, study a little harder. I passed class with a B. I said, okay, I needed that. Other schools probably would have been like, keep going. If you fail, you're going to take my class next year. So, the school really poured a lot into me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a key point that you end on there. Like that HBCU experience and the difference. But I mean, one thing about Unkle Lew is it's a pretty small HBCU, right? So, I mean, the experience that you have there is probably similar to any kind of liberal arts college that is relatively small compared to the FAMUs or the Jackson States. I'm sure it's a little bit different. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it, Unkle Lew, it's you're absolutely right. People who care about you and want to sit you down and give you that real talk that we all essentially need. You know what I'm saying? And it's I think that's a key point, because college is really like an incubator, right? You're sitting there getting these nurturing times and nurturing skill sets to build and go into the real world. So it's with Unkle Lew or HBCUs in general, how do you feel it helps in preparing you for the quote real world?
I think one of the things that, and it still helps me out in my professional development now, is never judge a book by its cover there, because it was some unique individuals that you will often overlook or think that are kind of insane or wasn't, being up to who they are, who were really sharp, who were able to help me learn lessons, who were able to teach me or give me ideas or able to push and motivate me. My circle there is extremely important. I carry that circle even into now. And the circle is what helped influence like that, that shape and structure of my future. So, never judging that book by its cover was really key. And that's that real family circle vibe. It really like pushed it strong there. I was like, if I failed, my friends would pick me up.
Yeah.
They'd be like, okay, all right, you failed this test. Let's study together to get that next test. And you didn't get that everywhere. And even in the work environment, I brought that over. Even if I'm working with a non-team player, I ensure that, no matter what, I got to make sure this team wins or we look good or, even if it's not reciprocated, hey, that's okay. That's fine. Because that good energy, that good vibe, it's going to come back on me.
Yeah, man. I think that's a really good point that you bring up about like community and stuff and like having that like family and stuff like that. Like, I think that that's something that we all kind of desire to have, but like sometimes kind of struggle with, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, how did you go about building community, like with all the different places that you've been? Cause it's like, you left like your small town of Natchez, right? To come to like Tougaloo, then go from Tougaloo, go to Atlanta. And then from Atlanta to a whole different side of like the South to where the Pacific Northwest and now in the Midwest. Like, how did you go about building those communities in those different pockets of the world? But then at the same time, like you just said, you've maintained them. And it's like, I think that that's a really impressive thing to be able to move and like realize the importance of community, but like not build just phased community. These are things that you're really and truthfully being strategic about, and like who are the people you're bringing into your life and like how they can help you in getting to your next step and how you maintain those relationships. That's really impressive, man.
So, yeah, I would say my brain started turning because as I think about my journey, I'm like, wow, how did it? Part of it, I'll be very honest. Part of it was, how I was raised. I was raised in a warming, welcoming environment. I always have been outspoken. They heard me before they saw me. They were like, oh, we hear that's Michael coming. So it was always sort of like this Southern charm, that I tend to develop from being in Natchez, where Tougaloo had polished it up. Put that little business acumen spin on it. That true networking connection. And even in Morehouse, because each place, I had to develop that new circle or that new friend group or that new boundary. To think about like, Tougaloo, I wasn't still too far from home. When I came to Tougaloo, there were a bunch of people from Natchez there. They were already established who introduced me to their circles, and it grew from there, and then part of my freshman cohort, us all being new, we learned from there. Morehouse, School of Medicine, I came there. I did like a summer internship there called Project Imhotep. Amazing internship for anyone interested in public health. This would truly tell you if you want to go into public health. And I think for my internship, I was at oh my goodness, I'm going to say it wrong and they're going to get so mad at me. DeKalb County Public Health Department. And then so I went back to Morehouse School of Medicine. From that summer, I had connections. I knew people there. A couple classmates were entering the MPH program with me, and I was able to build off of it. Most of it is because, at times I can't get a little spicy. But now it's, that of like, oh, we remember who we were, good times. It was a great vibe. You were genuinely looking out for us, or, I try to show that genuine care. And if it wasn't a good personality mix, I respected that boundary and I didn't force it and kept going. When it got to the Pacific Northwest, it was complete. Like, everyone called me crazy for going up there to Oregon. But I realized one thing. I said, in Atlanta, I'm number 385 with an MPH degree. You got like 5 schools churning out MPHs. in in the city and the surrounding counties and whatnot. I said, well, if I go to Oregon, I am the new MPH graduate, fresh off the scene from grad school, a part of the Healthcare Administration Fellowship. I'm Michael J. I'm not number 300 and whatever.
Yeah.
So going there was, everyone's like, he don't know nobody, he ain't got no family. Literally when I got there, I wasn't as nervous as I should have been, because I'm like, oh, I done did this several times. I'll restart over. It ain't, that's what life is about. I won't, some people get a community and they're like, oh, I'm staying in that community all my life. That's fine. That's good. But I'm like, but there's more to the world. Let me go ahead and piece all these connections together. So got to Oregon, and it was first very hard, but like my second day there, I had family who are from Chicago, who have roots in Mississippi. They took me under their wing. They guided me. They're the Williams, and I joined the NAACP. They introduced me to folks, and then from the work environment, I get to know people, learn lessons around who to trust, who not to trust, who has my best intentions out. And it's really for me like being that, going out there for it. I wasn't afraid. If rejection happened, it happened. If I caused harm, I learned the lesson. I learned that lesson. It made me I used every opportunity to grow. And I also realized, like, as now these networks, I got the network from Natchez, I got the network from Unkle Lew, the network from Morehouse in Atlanta, now the network from the Pacific Northwest, and now it carried over to Chicago. Well, once again, I started over from scratch, building that community, that bond, meeting people, and, establishing once again who I am. And at times it's hard. It will never be easy, but it's worthwhile to make this journey, make these sacrifices and steps.
Yeah, man. No, I think it's hilarious how strategic you are, because you made a really good point, right? Like, you don't want to be like you don't want to be one in a million, or like one in several thousand or whatever. You want to be like that big fish in that small pond. And like, that's essentially like what you can do, like, and it makes sense now, because it's just like, you went to Unkle Lew, right? And I mean, like, Unkle Lew is a small school, and like, if you show that grit and like show that you're interested and just always raise your hand to things, you become a superstar, and you get that opens doors. And then from going to there, you're like, okay, cool. Like, I want to do this public health thing, and like, let me learn in a place where public health is done. So you move to a place where public health is done, and like, you learn a lot about public health. But when it came to making your own move, you were like, nah, let me go to a place where it's just like, it's a little less competition. So like, you did your fellowship in like Oregon and stuff like that, and you learned a lot. And it, like you said, it was kind of like a challenge for you, personally and professionally. And now, you're in Chicago, and it's just like, I mean, think about this, man. Like, you're an associate director of operations, like, at your very like ripe middle 20s. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a very impressive move. And like, it sounds like a strategic move from gathering and getting that experience that you got in Oregon, in that fellowship program. And I think you had the fortune and misfortune, right? Like, I always try to see the glass half full, where it's like, there's a pandemic and you were in a role, and by being that person, one of a few, you know what I mean? And raise your hand and say, hey, I do it. And like, you learned a lot running those different programs in your organization. And like, that's what shot you to being in Chicago and like being in the roles that you are. You know what I mean?
Yes. And, the fellowship, I am so proud to say I was their first African-American fellow, and came in with a different mindset. Most of the times they have people with MBAs or MHAs. I came in with that MPH. So I had that different like viewpoint of how operation goes, how healthcare looks. What does population health even involve? How does that strategy come into play? And I became one of those key players when it came to like, our population health strategy, our diversity and inclusion strategy. I would tell them, I say there are a handful of African Americans in in the organization, in administration. I think we had one in chaplain services, a few in tech. I was one of the only ones in like fully administration. And why is that a problem? One is recruiting, who wants to come to the Northwest, understandable. The other is, the history of Oregon. If you really look into Oregon's history, it's supposed to be the last white utopia of America, and some of that plays a role. But the organization I was a part of, Salem Health, was very, looking at like, how are we going to tackle this? And then from there, they gave me opportunities. Like I started out the fellowship looking at those different like population health and those key things, those strategy. So when COVID hit, came over like their COVID, COVID operations when it came to like screening and helping to make policies and, getting those operations kind of like going in the flow. I think we had like 12 plus greeter stations, 4 of them 24 hours. We had policies for primary care clinics, policies for the hospital, the rural hospital, the regional, so many things. And I was lucky enough to be in a room full of individuals that would say, hey, Michael, you're going to be in charge of this portion of the COVID operations. And we're going to be here. We are going to be there with you. We're going to help make policies. We're going to help make the changes. We're going to help develop the 4 steps, the lean projects. And it was really instrumental in giving me the, foundations that I needed in healthcare. I had some from working at an accountable care organization called Morehouse Choice, and the CDC, that background, doing contract work with them. But it really shot forward there. And I can say, everyone knows that healthcare, Melvin, you did a healthcare administration fellowship. They are the fast track. They say, people, why y'all do that? I said, well, a healthcare administration fellowship is a fast track to the C-suite.
Yeah.
And to the C-suite, we learn things and we're privy to things that a lot of people don't get to see. We're in those C-suite meetings, seeing how the strategy of the organization is run, how much money is made, what are the financial stops, what are the operational things we need to jump over, joint commission audits. We're in that room learning and feeding and observing, and it's such a privilege. And I came from, Salem Health was a magnet hospital. They were a lean hospital. I learned from, I like to call them the hidden jewel of the Northwest. I learned from one of the best places ever. And it carried over to, Howard Brown, where I came here, started off with COVID operations, successfully launched 4 large COVID operations in less than 3 weeks throughout the city. We were in key areas where we were serving underserved populations of Latino, African American population. We went from a small team on COVID to over, we increased over 60-some%. It was such a joy, doing those things. And to now where I'm working with behavioral health, social services, and doing those operational things. So it was a true journey. And, my time at Salem Health, it was the fellowship, it was COVID operations, it was specialty services around cardiac and oncology, the business manager aspect and learning the finance and strategy of that and working with specialty doctors till now that work is coming back into play because once again, I'm working with specialty with psychiatry and therapists. And I'm like, look at it, all was full circle. That sacrifice, because going to Oregon was a sacrifice. But I met some extremely wonderful people. Me and you were able to grow closer. It was like, this was that chapter I needed. I look back at Oregon with fond memories around the people I met, the journeys that was taken. I'm like, yes, that was the right decision. No regrets.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And like, I think that it speaks volume to it, right? Like you made that sacrifice so that while you were making that next strategic move so that you could do things that, you could bet on yourself. You realized early on in your career, it's like, I need to learn some stuff. And like, let me learn in a place where I can really like sink my teeth into it and like really get opportunities. And then now you can make the decision to bet on yourself and go to a place where you want to go to. Like you have family, friends, all those different types of things in Chicago. It's closer to home in theory, like as far as like a plane ride and all that kind of stuff compared to the kind of traveling you got to do from Oregon and stuff. And like from a work perspective, you're doing things that you learned and learning, but then also you're doing like that mission driven work too, right? Like where your organization, like I think that one thing that I really appreciate about it is it really focuses on community health, specifically amongst the LGBTQ community. Because I mean, you know, the reality is like there's disparities amongst all communities, you know what I'm saying? And like anytime that you don't acknowledge the healthcare disparities amongst the one group, then you're really and truthfully becoming them, right? And you never want to be them because it's those who are against you as well. So it's like, you know, treat others like you want to be treated and stuff. But I think, you know, what's even more interesting about it is like that connection of doing like that kind of mission driven work and like your graduate thesis work that you did at Morehouse. And so like, you know, if you could talk a little bit about like that thesis work that you did and like how even connecting that public health degree into your operations, because you're right, like a lot of people who do operations have healthcare administration, business administration backgrounds, things like that. But public health, I think it's what I like about it. It's a feel good degree, right? You know, you're trying to create world peace. Wash your hands.
There you go. Scrub it up.
Because we all want to be like healthy and stuff. And like to do that in operations, like how does that feel? You know, the public, shout out to, I have to say shout out to Dr. Wendy White, because when I was trying to find out my next steps, Dr. White made a very clear statement to me. Very honestly, Melvin, I was about to Teach for America and go to Jackson State and stay in Jackson. Dr. White said, no, you're applying to Morehouse, and if you get in, you're going because you have to spread your wings. And that really catapulted how my next journeys in life kind of went. I don't even know if she remembers that conversation. I bet she does, man. She remembers everything.
Morehouse School of Medicine, their MPH program was focused around community. A lot of programs say, oh, we're going to do community. No. Second week in the class, we were in the community. We were surveying or servicing, volunteering, doing the work in there knee deep, seeing how policies that came down the pipeline affected the community and vulnerable populations. And I was able to see firsthand like what the public health degree means. When public health first started, a lot of people didn't want it or know about it. Now everybody and their mama want a public health degree. I said, well, okay, I want to do the public health degree. I'm going for community. Then I said, oh, community don't pay. I said, oh, I want to support the community, but I need a little coin because I can't just do that portion of it. So that's why I founded the health administration. And I began to tailor focus how I took my classes. Had a wonderful mentor there, Dr. Renetta Waldrop, and I also had some guidance from Dr. Herman Taylor, who was over the Jackson Heart Study. And those two individuals really said like, hey, if you want to do this health administration route, these are the classes to take. These are the places to do, internships to do. And I focused all of my skills. Like I was in the budgeting class, strategic operations class. I was doing courses at Clark and other places to say like, I need all the pieces needed. Yeah. So I knew that my MPH, that focus on health administration and policy, it will bolster me because I'm going in these operational rooms with a different lens. Yeah. And so my research reflected that. Yeah. Coming from Mississippi where cardiovascular disease is such a rampant high rate, insurance is all types of crazy. My thesis was around metabolic syndrome, which is a cluster of diabetes and different, high blood pressure and different sort of things that are attributed to cardiovascular increase in cardiovascular disease, and it tied into like your health insurance and the type of healthcare facility that you went to. And the research was astounding. To see it proofly in hardcore data that those who have hard cardiovascular disease were uninsured or on Medicaid and Medicare or went to FHQCs, and those with better health outcomes, they were commercially insured. They went to some of the top rated hospitals, or even there was a small group that were commercially insured but still had poor health outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? And I focused my research on that because I was like, let me look into this on how I can better inform my family, my friends, my community around this. I began to inform people around, there's charity care. If you can't afford it, but you still need health care, hospitals can write those bills off in order to make sure that, they're going to get a tax write-off. They're going to do a story on you, but you have a healthier outcome. Don't let finances come in the way of this. There are insurance navigators. There are benefit navigators. There are all types of things to where if you think you can't afford an office visit, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Annual health wellness visits, they are free. Go get them done. Your insurance is Medicaid, Medicare, TRICARE. They will pay for that preventive medicine. Bringing that into the rooms where they talk about money. It's like, hey, let's look at like how this is impacting our vulnerable populations, and tying in my research with that. It blended all the pieces together. I was like, oh, this is the sweet spot for me in operations and strategy in public health. And I knew it was for me. I was like, oh, this is my niche, and I love it.
No, man, I get that. So like, I can tell like that you've really found like what you love doing and stuff like that, because it's just like success that you've had in your career too. It shows like, engaging in like not only work that you do from like your day job, but also like nonprofit work that you do and supporting like other organizations and like building up their operations, or like working with like other HBCU graduates or UNCF, or like the Tougaloo Alumni Association, and like all these different things that you do to leverage like your skill sets to help those who helped you. And it's like never forgetting where you come from and all that kind of stuff, man. You're definitely like killing the game with all that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Oftentimes, those of us on this path, we often suffer from imposter syndrome. So we really don't see the impact that our journey is causing. So sometimes we need, that's why I'm so thankful to have friends like you, those that reaffirmation that's needed. I do the same thing to you around like your path and your role and all the things that you're doing. And it's just like, okay, it helps us realize like, hey, we started from the bottom. There's a saying, I still got dirt under my fingers from how I had to claw myself from the bottom, and it's true. I'm over here like, yeah, and some people be ashamed. I'm over here like, I'm proud of that journey. I'm so thankful for my upbringing and all the impact work. And, shout out to Tougaloo College National Alumni Association, United Negro College National Alumni National Alumni Council for believing in me as a young leader and how I have grown in those roles and impacting those organizations. I'm all about HBCUs and fundraising scholarship dollars, so make sure y'all donate over to Tougaloo College or to the UNCF to make sure that next generation of, disenfranchised or vulnerable population students, they have this opportunity that we had to go to college for free or with heavy scholarships on their side.
Yeah. No, I get that completely. So like, let me ask you this. You talked a lot about like how, you found your niche, you found your calling, all those kind of things. Like, how close do you think that you are to your goal? Like, whether it's professionally, personally, whatever, you know what I'm saying? You've been making a lot of moves to get you to this point. And like, I think when I listen to you talk and like, even just, over these past couple of minutes and stuff like that, like, I really think that, you're you're really taking those steps to where you want to be. Like you see the man that you want to be, and like you're literally taking the correct actions to get to that point. How close do you feel like you are?
This, I often think about that, when it comes to professionally and personally, for the last sort of like almost decade, personally suffered. I was, excuse the language, I was a career whore. I was in it, whatever it took to reach that professional goal. I sacrificed a lot personally. Now I think that I'm a place professionally where I am challenged daily. I am growing consecutively. I'm still hungry for that knowledge, but everything is on the pathway. I'm being mentored and poured into, in the organization I'm in now. I think I'm at that good spot to be like, Michael, it is okay to be like you. You're at a good spot now. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. So what that means now for me is like that personal life balance. Like I'm trying to connect more with friends and family and bridging some of those gaps that I've lost behind, making sure that I'm there for my family, making sure I'm there for my friends and like who I am as a person. Because who I am as a person got lost for a second. We're a professional student. I said, well, Michael, you're more than a professional student. So I'm carving that piece out more daily. That's one of my goals for this year is like, Michael, truly, what are some things you truly love, learn, want to learn? What are some of those things that you want to dive deeper into yourself? Starting therapy, that was sometimes very hard, because people in the African American community or even people of color community, they often associate what you do with who you are. And I'm at this point now, it's like, oh, okay, Michael, you're part of senior leadership. Okay, that's good. But besides that, who are you? And that has been these last couple months of finding that or being in that, that spot of like focusing and find clarity on that and using this 2021 year or, it may even spill over 2023, learning that. I think that is that portion I'm at now, I'm, hungry for. And professionally, one thing I do know is, eventually I do want to become C-suite or, become a senior consultant. But the one thing that I see so clearly, anytime people ask me that question is, I want to become a professor. I see myself teaching the next generation of students what it means to move in this public health space, in this operational space, how to not make the mistakes I made, learn from me, how to truly go into this world because healthcare, it is an old boys club. And, the struggles and the things that, you and I had to fight through, how can I make that easier for the next generation? Because, even getting into our fellowships, hard. When I tell people the process of going into a fellowship, I mean, it is grueling. It is worse than going through C-suite interviews. Like we go through several layers. So, becoming that professor, preferably at a HBCU, I shout out teaching to that next generation of students. I think that's what I see ultimately at the end goal, professionally and personally. I'm still on that journey, and I'm okay with admitting that. I'm still on that journey and finding out, hey, who is Michael J. personally, and his likes, his dislikes, his grievances, his love life, his, friendships, relationships, his family. How does that look for him?
Yeah. No, man, that's a really great summation. Like, I really think like when you get to that point of becoming a professor, because like that's a reality too, right? I think that literally you have the blueprint for it. Literally what we just talked about, I think is a really good guide towards anyone who wants to get into healthcare administration. And I think that, really and truthfully, I'll share the show notes with you and all that kind of stuff. So it's just like you can even just take your own notes of what you just said and like package that into some material. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like you do the consulting work, right? And I think that you can teach the classes, and I think that you have the blueprint for it. And I mean, like I don't necessarily know who all is listening and all that kind of stuff, but like whenever you share this with people and like more and more people listen to it, that's more opportunities to make this a thing happen, because you know what to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, not only so I think that's the concept about the talented 10th, right? It's like there's the talented 10th that like is the leadership class of like the African Americans, but then there's the guided 100 or something like that, that is this diverse group of representation from all the different communities and how they're gonna help overall. And I think that, you know, that's what you're trying to do. You're taking your experiences from your opportunities that you've gotten and trying to give back in the end. And I think that's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, and you know, bringing that next group up is sometimes the hard part, because you meet resistance or you take mentees under your wing and some don't realize like that push you have to do. I let people know like, hey, my social capital is extremely important. You know, I'm not just going to recommend you to something or recommend you for anything. You got to prove it, show their worth, and I expect the same in return. Like if someone puts their name on the line for me, I had to make sure I earned their respect and their things from there. So, you know, it is a journey, but some individuals get to this level or go higher and forget. And I'm like, no, that can't be me. My grandmother often reminds me of like where I come from and what the roots mean. And like, you know, hey, you were born in the country, you were born here, and this is where you come from. And don't forget that. And, you know, we value that. So that's why we got to reach back and get to that next generation.
Yeah, no, I get that. Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate your time and stuff. I just want to go through these last little lightning questions with you and stuff, and I'll let you get back to your life. How's that sound?
Oh, that sounds pretty good.
All right. So what's your favorite relaxation or self-care activity?
Or watching anime.
What's your favorite anime show right now?
Right now, it is that time I got reincarnated as a slime. I'm a big isekai fan, so these are like the anime where you're transported to a different world or reborn as like a hero.
Oh, okay. Oh, man, I've never seen that one before. I'm really big in like Demon Slayer and all that kind of stuff right now, and like I've been trying to stick to One Piece. I know how you feel about that. What's your best book recommendation?
Best book recommendation is Good to Great by Jim Collins. It is an absolute necessary read for anyone interested in any type of leadership position or any type of growing your company. Excellent book. That is like, any interview I'm in, I mention that book. It's pretty standard. Even as I teach my team, I'm like, hey, one of the mandatory readings we're going to do for the year is Good to Great. I want you to see what Jim is talking about so we can learn from there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And one person you want to thank for your journey thus far?
I would have to say my grandmother. I would like to thank my grandmother for her and my grandfather's sacrifice and for like pushing and allowing me to be me. Because I was very different from my uncle and my father. I was very different. They allowed me to be me. They were there. They picked me up from tennis practice, took me places. They let me wherever I moved. They were there. They made sure like their first flight ever was to Oregon, and they did not want to fly, but I was like, "You're flying." So I just really thank them for being part of it. So instrumental in this my journey and my life.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, man. And like any other final thoughts you want to share before like we close this out?
I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to be the first guest. Yeah, I'm a little nervous, but I'm looking forward to your journey with Don't Be Coy. I know it's going to be an amazing podcast. And once again, hey, y'all, donate to Tougaloo College and United Negro College Fund. Let's make sure those people of color and their students get what they need when it comes to financial assistance and scholarship dollars.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it. This has been another episode of Don't Be Coy with Unkle Lew. As always, I'd like to thank this episode's guest for a great conversation, as well as thank you, the listener, for joining in. Whether you're a first-time listener or a regular, I always appreciate your support. If you like today's episode and ever want to listen to more, subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Audible, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. And to join our community and access future bonus content, be sure to visit dbkpodcast.com.